My name is Bob Listenby. I'm one of two first assistants for District Attorney Larry Krasner. I'm here today to continue our practice of having weekly community press conferences. Our goal here is to provide the community on a weekly basis with updates about gun crimes and highlight policies and people at the District Attorney's Office who are working to prioritize justice and public safety. Today I'd like to acknowledge certain folks who are here with us. We have with us Assistant District Attorney Chesley Lightsey, who is Chief of the Homicide Non-Fatal Shooting Unit. Assistant District Attorney Caleb Arno, who is our District Attorney Office Immigration Counsel, who prefers to use the pronoun they. Kelly Burkhardt, DAO LGBTQ+ Liaison and Victim Witness Coordinator. We have Crystal Davis, who is the sister of Michelle Tameka Washington. We also have the family of and advocates for standing with the family of Dominique Remy Fells. In addition, we have the Reverend Andrea Harrington, Associate Minister, Whosoever Ministries, and Christopher Bartlett, Executive Director of the William Way LGBT Community Center. We thank him for that. And finally, we have a person who's going to be joining us, but not here at just this moment, Micah Thomas, Operations Manager Galay, who uses and prefers the pronoun they. Before we get started with the specific cases that we're referencing this morning, I'd like to give you a gun crimes update on activities that have occurred between July 17, 21 and July 23rd of this month. We'd like to acknowledge that there have been, to date, 315 homicides. This date last year, there were 241. In other words, there's been an increase of 31%. Between July 17th and July 23rd, there were 8 homicides and 37 non-fatal shootings. Also during this time, July 17th to July 23rd, there were 190 gun or gun violence incidents. 86 arrests were made by law enforcement, which adds to a total of 83 cases. I'd like to acknowledge also our continuing effort to end cash bail. DA has made it clear that our goal is that those folks who are engaged in violence on the streets of the city and county of Philadelphia should be held without bail. Others who are charged with minor offenses should be released. However, that's not the policy. We won't get that policy implemented until we have the full cooperation and collaboration of all justice partners, and we've worked effectively with the legislature on this issue. At the present time, you should know that the median bail set for illegal possession of guns during this past week was $100,000. At the same time, the median bail set for violent offenses with guns was $150,000. I'd like to highlight 2 cases that occurred this weekend that indicate the kind of violence that's occurring on our streets. First of all, on Sunday, July 25th, at approximately 11:30 a.m., an 18-year-old white male was shot 1 time in the head, 1 time in the right arm, and 1 time in the left hand at the Schizler Recreation Center's basketball court in the 26th Police District. He was transported by medics to Temple Hospital and placed in critical condition. This remains an active investigation, and no arrest has been made by the Philadelphia Police Department. Anyone with information related to this incident should contact Philadelphia Police Department East Detectives Division at 215-686-3244. Several hours later, at approximately 3 a.m. on Monday morning, there was a triple shooting on the 1700 block of North 16th Street in the 22nd Police District. An approximately 28-year-old black male was shot 1 time in the left arm. An approximately 18-year-old black female was shot 1 time in the head. An approximately 20-year-old black male was shot 1 time in the chest. The victims were transported to Temple Hospital, where the black female was pronounced. This remains an active investigation, and no arrests have been made by the Philadelphia Police Department at this time. Anyone with information related to this incident should contact Philadelphia Police Department's Homicide Unit at 215-686-3334. At this point in time, I want to be clear about the District Attorney's our posture and the posture of this office towards people who are engaged in gun violence. Let me be very clear. If you self-identify with groups committing violent acts, such as the Pit Boys, North Side, South Side, Hilltop, P&B, Brickyard, and other such groups, or if you senselessly pick up a gun and shoot men, women, babies, or families, you will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I want to be clear about that. We have also, I want to be clear, that there are victims, families, and community members who are impacted by gun violence. They come in contact with our Victim Services Unit and our CARES Unit. We have with us Kelly Bernhardt, who is our LGBTQ plus liaison and victim witness coordinator, and she will speak about support services provided to families who have lost a loved one to homicide this past week. I also want to highlight one of the district attorney's policies, which is focused on violence prevention. The DA has been adamant. He is not about stepping in after there has been a homicide committed or after there's been non-fatal shooting. He wants to do everything we can to prevent gun violence in the city. Since 2021, the DAO has distributed more than $240,000 in grants to 12 community-based organizations. DA Krasner is committed to giving out $1 million this year to organizations that have a 501c3 nonprofit status and that work with young people and whose mission is anti-violence or anti-drug in nature. Any organization interested in applying for grant funding should reach out to the Philadelphia Foundation at grant-making services at philafound.org. That's grantmaking at philafound.org. While our office continues to work diligently to implement reforms and progressive policies aimed at improving the criminal justice system in Philadelphia, such as our Restorative Justice Initiative and Juvenile Justice Diversion, we simultaneously remain committed to the vigorous prosecutions of shootings and homicides. I want to be clear about that, so let me repeat it. While we are in favor of progressive policies, we simultaneously remain dedicated to vigorously prosecuting shootings and homicides. We're going to highlight updates on 2 homicide cases involving transgender women. We strongly condemn hate crimes against the LGBTQ plus community, and I want to make it clear that we will do whatever we can to support the investigation and prosecution of people who are engaged in those hate crimes. I want to reaffirm the District Attorney's Office commitment to ensuring public safety for all of Philadelphia's communities, regardless of gender identity or sexual orientation. At this time, I would like to introduce to you Assistant District Attorney Chesley Lightsey, Supervisor of the District Attorney's Homicide and Non-Fatal Shootings Unit, who will provide specific updates about recent developments in homicide cases involving the deaths of 2 transgender women, Michelle Tameka Washington and Dominic Remy Fells. Chesley?
Good morning. I want to take this opportunity to update you on 2 cases that moved through our system last week involving 2 transgender women, separate cases. I'll first speak about a murder that happened on May 20th of 2019. On that date, at approximately 5 o'clock in the morning in the area of 3400 North 11th Street, Michelle Tameka Washington was gunned down by Troy Bailey. I want to be clear, we did not prosecute this as if it were a hate crime. This actually was 2 folks who were there together, and we do not believe that Ms. Washington was killed because she was a transgender woman. However, we did take this case obviously very seriously. She was shot 4 times. The case was prosecuted by ADA Jeff Hanowski, who's in the room today. That case went to trial as a bench trial. The defendant was convicted of 3rd-degree murder and related charges. He was sentenced, Troy Bailey was sentenced last week for the murder of Ms. Washington to 25 to 50 years of state incarceration. Also last week, there was a preliminary hearing held in the murder of Dominic Remy Fells. I want to acknowledge that here in the room with me today is Dominique's mother, her baby sister, her cousin, as well as her uncle. There are countless other family members who would be here if we had room in the building to hold them. And I should have also acknowledged, and I didn't, is that Michelle's sister is also here in the room today. So in the preliminary hearing last week, the Commonwealth presented evidence that included DNA evidence against the murderer Akhenaten Jones, who is charged with the murder of Dominique Remy Fells. Mr. Jones was a fugitive from justice for quite some time, which is why the preliminary hearing has just gone forward. Ms. Fells was actually killed back in June of 2020. Mr. Jones was held over on murder generally, which includes the charge of first-degree murder, as well as other related charges. That case will be moving forward to trial, and the Commonwealth looks forward to our opportunity to prosecute Mr. Jones for that murder. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chesley. I want to speak briefly about the District Attorney's commitment to working with community members and stakeholders. Okay, I'm sorry. Before I begin, apologize. Kelly Bernhardt. Kelly, would you step up, please? Kelly is going to discuss the role of her role as a victim witness coordinator and her role as a liaison with the LGBTQ plus community. Kelly?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kelly Burkhardt. I'm the LGBTQ liaison for the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office, as well as victim witness coordinator. I've worked in multiple units. So victim services has been my thing for the last three plus years. And I have to say that doing this work has been probably one of the most rewarding yet very gut-wrenching jobs that I've ever committed to. This pin symbolizes the trans flag, and I worked with Michelle Tameka Washington prior to unfortunately being murdered in 2019, of which she was number 6 out of 27 trans women who were murdered. So even though we think that certain cases may not be hate crimes, there is definitely hate against trans women, and I think that's really important to know. The average life expectancy of a trans woman, especially a trans woman of color, is 35 years old. I learned a lot from Michelle, but going back to this pin, the day I found out she died, May 19th, that morning, when I got a phone call at 7:30 in the morning from the Office of LGBT Affairs, I immediately put this on my badge, and now I wear it here proudly because I've committed to making sure that as a cis person, everyone outside of, or in my world, in my space, is very well aware of the importance of us to uplift trans folks, particularly Dominique Remy Fells, Tracy Mia Green, and of course, Michelle Tameka Washington. In victim services, we end up reaching out immediately when someone is, through our CARES team, if someone is unfortunately murdered. We're on the ground calling the family, being there with them, working with them to show them, working through the paperwork because they're just going to get flooded with a bunch of that stuff. We're there to, of course, give information about court dates and acknowledging sort of a lot of fear that a lot of folks go through, but we work with everyone with a trauma-informed care approach, which means that we immediately we work with empathy. We want to make sure that our victims, families, survivors are safe. We want to make sure that we're giving them trustworthiness and transparency, along with collaborating with them to come up with the best solution for them and for that family to heal from this trauma, as well as empowering them. And I think this is one of those moments right here which is very empowering, even though unfortunately, justice will never be served truly with the loss of the Philadelphians, the trans women in our community, but it's empowering that family is here. Thank you to the family of Dominique Remy Fells for being here. Thank you to the family of Michelle Tameka Washington for being here. And lastly, I just want to touch on one little thing that we do. It's called a victim impact statement. And this statement is really important only in the sense of, for two reasons. One, it gives the family, the victims, the survivors, the ability to talk about how this has affected them. I thankfully, Miss Davis, who is Tameka's sister, I worked, we grew a really immeasurable bond, I think, over this process, and being able to be there for her and watching her grow has been empowering. When we went over the victim impact statement the day before the sentencing of Troy Bailey, her son was around. Her son was 3 years old when his aunt Tameka was murdered. And when we were going through the statement, we were trying to not have very harsh language for the 5-year-old, the age of him now, but he asked us, when the name came up, did he kill her? He asked her that question. And then he emphatically stated he shot her. And, Miss Davis was incredibly, as myself, incredibly affected by this, because she never speaks like that around him. And it's just, she asked, how do you know that? And he said, bad people do bad things. So it's really important just to remember to uplift everyone. This affects everyone's life. It doesn't just affect the life of the person who is gone or the family that's here. It affects everyone. It affects our community. So I hope we all just continue to uplift everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kelly. As you can see, these tragic events have truly impacted both people on our staff and people who are here from the family, but also to my left we have advocates and friends who've come out in support of these two women. So this is a very impactful kind of circumstance. We remain committed to working closely with community members and stakeholders. We try and make space for social influencers and credible messengers to advocate on behalf of marginalized communities. At this point in time, I'd like to introduce for remarks 3 people. Christopher Bartlett, who is the Executive Director of William Way LGBT Community Center. Micah Thomas, if Micah has arrived, or he has not arrived. Okay, so the Reverend Andrea Harrington, Associate Minister of Whatsoever Ministry. So each will be up for remarks, and Reverend Andrea Harrington will follow Mr. Bartlett's remarks without me stepping in for further introductions. Okay, thank you.
Good morning. I'm Chris Bartlett. I use he, him, his pronouns, Executive Director of the William Way LGBT Community Center. I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the friends, family, and all the advocates who've given so much love and support to Dominique Remy-Fells and to the family of Michelle Tameka Washington, and to let you know that the William Way Community Center stands ready to support you in any way that you might need or ask. This has been a really challenging 2 years, going through COVID and facing so much violence in our communities. And as somebody who's done work in this community for over 30 years and seen so many violent cases and the need that we have to do advocacy and hard work, I have a special gratitude to the men and women and others who are here today to support that work. The center has really been focusing through our Trans Resource Center and our peer counseling programs and our Trans Way support in focusing on the joyous, loving, supportive lives of trans people. And I did want to note that Dominique Remy-Fells once walked a fashion show in this room in a moment of joy. And if you've ever seen the picture of her in that joyous moment celebrating her life, you join me in even greater grief for her loss. And I try to get in touch with that level of loss and sadness when we face these murders and really think about what we can do as a community center to address the structural issues that lead to this violence, to improve school district and school support for our students, to improve job opportunities, and to really doing work in communities to educate folks about trans people's real lives and the incredible contributions they make in every community in the city. So I'm very grateful for the hard work that's been done to stand alongside the families of the victims during this challenging time. And I do invite those families and friends and advocates to reach out to us at the Center for support as we move forward. Now I'd like to introduce Mika.
Good morning to everyone. My name is Reverend Andrea Lamore Harrington. I am an associate minister at Whosoever Ministries here in Philadelphia, and I work for the Philadelphia Health Department. I stand here as a reverend. I stand here as a proud Black Mexican trans woman, but I stand here perplexed. Why? Because in this day and time, 2021, it seems as if it is hunting season for trans women. It seems as though there is something against the very lives and breath of trans women, just living their lives, getting up in the morning, having to overcome obstacles just to get out of bed, to know that everything they do during the day will be judged, shunned upon, looked at as awkward, and all of that with no love to come behind it. And to come behind that, murder, abuse. I'm standing here as a mother, as a parent, and I'm asking all of my community members, all of my brothers and sisters, regardless of your stature in life, regardless of your place financially, regardless of the color of your skin, I'm asking for us to remember love. My Father, God above, in his word he said that he loved the world so much he sent his only begotten Son, so that whosoever believes on him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. That whosoever includes trans women. When I wake up in the morning, my only intention is to love everyone that I come in contact with and to do my very best for that day. I ask all of you, join me in doing the same. If we show more love, we get more love. And obviously, it will be shown throughout the world with less violence. Love and respect cost nothing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Reverend Harrington. At this time, we'll take questions from the press. I want to acknowledge up front that many of the questions will be directed to folks who you've just heard from, who can address some of the issues a little more specifically than I can. So who wants to go first, if any? Okay. Let me ask Chesley to stand up. Chesley?
Yes. So you asked what a bench trial is. So that is it. When was it? I'm sorry, Jeff. I didn't know if that was recent or. My apologies. I'm going to ask ADA Hanowski to answer that question.
Good morning. It was May 7th of this year.
Okay. And he was convicted of
Third degree and firearm offenses.
Okay. And then as far as the case against Mr. Jones, are you?
No.
Sorry.
Not no problem.
I was hoping you could talk a little bit about some of the evidence against him. I think you mentioned, was the prelim held last week?
The preliminary hearing was held last week. Yes.
I know you mentioned there's some DNA evidence. Can you talk a little bit more?
There is DNA evidence, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but what I will say is that at a home that was rented or lived in solely by Akhenaten Jones, there was DNA evidence found there in the home and apartment that Mr. Jones lived in to suggest that Dominique or Ms. Fells was killed in that home. And that's what the DNA evidence pointed to. We have no evidence or reason to believe that this was motivated solely by the fact that Ms. Fells was a transgender woman. In fact, the evidence that we have would suggest that there was a prior relationship between Mr. Jones and Ms. Fells, so this wouldn't, there's no indication that this was because of her status as a trans woman.
Any other questions for Ms. Lightsey while she's still here? She may have to come back. Other questions? Why don't you just, Jasmine?
The update is that arrest warrants have been, well, an arrest has been made and another arrest warrant has been approved. I don't have the names of those folks here with me right this second. Do you have a specific question regarding it?
There's video circulating of a fight between Burkhardt and David. Is this part of the investigation?
The video, I have not seen the video that is circulating. I can tell you that there is video evidence in the case, so I've not seen what's been circulated. I'm guessing on social media. Is that where you're seeing it? I've not seen that personally, so I can't speak to it, but we do have video evidence in the case.
I'm sure that's part of the investigation, right?
Yes, it is.
And will the video evidence dictate what kind of charges Burkhardt may face?
So the video evidence certainly always helps that, and obviously witnesses who were at the scene, there were many. They did come forward and give information to police, but that coupled with the video evidence is what the charges will be based upon. Okay, you're welcome.
Oh, just a second, Jesse. Why don't you just stand here?
I will just stand here.
Other questions? Yes, please.
Is the DA's office committed to investigating all unsolved deaths of trans people, including Lamore?
Jesse?
So what I should say is this. I want to start with the investigations happen at the police department normally. I understand in NYSA that was a little different, and that was before my time in the office, so I apologize for not having as much information. But yes, the office is always committed to if there's new evidence that is brought forward, if there's something that we didn't know before, or something that would change the way that we view prior evidence. No investigation of a homicide is ever officially closed unless we know who the suspect is and maybe the suspect is dead, but we don't ever stop investigating those cases.
Stand by, Jesse. Other questions?
We actually have a question from WH Live, Ms. Davis. He wants to know how you feel about sentencing.
Would you like to, Ms. Davis?
So just let them know what are your thoughts about the sentencing.
Step a little closer to the microphone.
I'm not sure about the sentencing. I thought I was going to get there and feel relieved, but I didn't. And he wasn't remorseful at all. And I think that just brought all of the hurt and pain back for me, for my family, my children. He didn't care. He didn't care who he killed that night. He didn't care about how it affected us, my family, the LGBTQ plus community. He just didn't care. And for that, I don't think I'll ever be able to forgive him, forever be able to say, like, I can start to forgive him because my pain is every day. Every day I can't call her and talk to her. I'm hurting on the inside. She was my rock. And I don't have that. He took that away for something that was so stupid. And I could never forgive him for that. I feel for his children because they have to grow up without a father. But my sister never got a chance to have any kids. So I only have but so much sympathy for them. That's it.
Any other questions for Ms. Davis before she leaves the podium?
She was full of life, like anybody else. I mean, she loved her family. She loved her nieces and nephews, her sisters. She loved being an advocate for the LGBT community, speaking out, traveling. She was just full of life. Like, her life was just cut way too short. She had so much more work here to do. And since her death, like, I've vowed to try to continue her work. Continue to make sure she does not get forgotten about. For people like Dominique to never get forgotten about because they're who we're here for. They're the ones out there on the front line every day, and I hope that they will never, ever, ever be forgotten about because it's hard. It's hard for us.
Any other questions for her?
Thank you.
We'll take one more question, then we're going to probably bring this to an end. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, we work very closely with the Philadelphia Police Department. Any evidence that comes in, we work, tirelessly with them. We also, once these cases are brought in and go through preliminary hearing, we have put our very best lawyers focused on handling the preliminary hearings, and we've had a really high success rate in terms of the preliminary hearings for homicide cases going back to when the courts opened up last year in September. So again, we're vigorously and aggressively prosecuting these cases. Chesley and her team have been working diligently on them, and we will continue to do that. The courts have gone forward and set up an additional gun court, and we've assigned our most experienced attorneys to that gun court. That is going forward in a rapid pace. They've doubled the number of cases going in there over the last couple of weeks. So again, whatever we can do as prosecutors, we will do. We have law enforcement working with us. Detectives from the Philadelphia Police Department are on our staff working with us diligently as well. So sometimes we work in parallel in terms of the investigations. But again, we are determined to do everything we can. But the real key here is prevention. Prevention is about getting to these cases before they happen. No one wants to talk to a family that's experienced the kind of grief that you saw here today about how we're prosecuting the cases. They want to hear about what's going on both with us, with our partners in the community, and especially in the community, to try and prevent these kinds of crimes from happening. And that, too, is where we're focusing. We're doing that in terms of our grant program, but we have a lot of other things that need to be done both by us and by other members of the criminal justice community. All right. Just one final question.
So I know that in both of these cases, it says that they weren't exactly motivated by the victim's status as a trans person, but we know that there are a lot of factors that make trans women particularly vulnerable to this type of violence. So I was wondering, I'm not sure who the right person is here to talk about that, but I was wondering if anybody would be able to talk a little about some of the sort of social factors.
Kelly, do you want to step back up, please? Sure. Thanks.
The social factors are pretty simple. People don't like what they don't know, so they may not hire someone who identifies as a trans person or they think looks different. So it's unemployment, it's housing issues. Some folks have had to use sex work for survival, just to eat, to pay their rent, to get medicine for their loved one that they're taking care of. So when we uplift, this is what I was talking about, like uplifting these voices, it's also uplifting these individuals. So people are, they're you and me, they're parents, they go to church, they are ministers of church, they are, entrepreneurs, they are business owners, they are, truck drivers, they're everything. So so things like what a lot of our community partners do is they provide programs and services, and that just means helping folks deal with the trauma that they've dealt with in the past, and that's a big part of it too, is having, mental health is a big issue, and when you're going through all these, down this road of trauma all the time because your parent may not have accepted you at one point, you've been thrown out of your house, you got to find a place to live, you're couch surfing. Some folks have become victims of crime during that. We have multiple rape cases in our system that may not necessarily be because the person identifies as a trans person, but it's just the fact of it's more of like it's the nuance of it. It's more of like just not liking what we have or what is presented in front of us, and that creates fear, and I think that's why a lot of people get attacked.
Well, I'd like to give you a picture, if I can, as a trans woman. In school, I'm abused. I'm bullied. So I can't go to school. Well, without an education, how are you supposed to get a job that pays well enough to pay all of your bills? So you turn to sex work or whatever kind of work that is going to get you that money. But it's not going to be the work to really sustain you. But there are others on the outside that see you and say, well, there's another way. Oh, you could do this, or you could do that. When you have no education, no love at home. Matter of fact, because you're trans, you may not have a home. How about if you don't have enough to eat in your belly? You don't have enough money to buy clothing to go to a job interview, which means there are so many things set against you before you even get out of the bed. If you have a bed, by the time you get out of bed, the first thing you're going to hear is no. Why? Just because you're trans. So it's not easy for a trans woman to get up in the morning and just say, I'm going to live my life, because the world won't allow you to live your life in peace. And that is why we have such murder. That is why we have such abuse. That's why we have such negligence. It's not the fact that trans women are not trying. It's just that we don't have as many opportunities on a daily as the actual regular person. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly and Reverend Harrington. I just want to add one word. I first met large numbers of trans women here at the Williams Way as a Stoneleaf Fellow. My job was to help homeless youth here in the city and county of Philadelphia. And one thing I can say is there are a lot of homeless youth here in our city. And if you could reach out to them here at William Way, or at the Attic, at our other facilities around here, you can help them by helping them get jobs, by helping them have other educational opportunities, by helping them with identification and other kinds of key things that they need to make progress. They are couch surfing. They are finding it difficult to have places to stay. They are being rejected by their parents. We, those of us who are here, can give them love and give them assistance to try and help them find their way. Thank you very much for joining us here today. That's the end of our press conference.